this is our best opportunity. This will be the best opportunity in 47 years that we'll ever get. Not realizing that it wasn't the best opportunity at all. But until America actually said, you know what, we ball. Let's go in. Let's blow up Iran. Let's decapitate its leadership. Let's force them into a corner where they have no other option but to fight their way out of it and completely collapse the energy markets around the globe. Best analysis so far by Mearsheimer.
On U.S. bases and ports.
Two of my goats talking to one another.
It's humiliating.
Holy, Chris Hedges has 1 million views on God. Americans are awakening to the reality. I never thought I would see the day where two of my goats are talking to one another. Two of my goats are talking to one another and millions are listening. Oh my God. Instead of Professor Jiang, this is what you should listen to.
Defeat would potentially mean the end of U.S. hegemony in the region. Joining me to discuss the war in Iran is Professor John Mearsheimer. He is the R. Wendell Harrison Distinguished Service Professor of Political Science.
May Allah awaken the people and help them to see the evil doings of Israel and the United States.
At the University of Chicago. Professor Mearsheimer, who graduated from West Point and was a captain in the...
The weakness of modern leftist analysis is that we haven't seen revolution from within the imperial core. We need to innovate, not only just rely on the history of revolution. I agree. That's what I'm seeking to do. I also think it's important to interpret the failures, the many failures of revisionism in the Western world, in Latin American countries as well. Not just simply to say, well, American intervention was too domineering, too powerful of a force, and therefore it didn't work. Okay? There's also that aspect as well.
Air Force is the author of numerous books, including Conventional Deterrence, Nuclear Deterrence, Ethics, Lytle Hart and the Weight of History, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, The Israel Lobby.
By the way, The Israel Lobby is currently the bestseller on Amazon, which I thought was really funny.
And U.S. Foreign Policy, and Why Leaders Lie, The Truth About Lying in International Politics. Let's begin with this fact that the Pentagon for 3 decades has vigorously fought back against Israeli pressure to go to war with Iran, whether that was Obama, Bush, Biden, and for some reason, for all of the reasons, of course, that are now evident, the Pentagon didn't want this conflict. How was that reticence or resistance overcome?
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, Chris, that none of Trump's predecessors took the bait when the Israelis tried to trap us into going to war again.
Why are you, this is so funny, why are you believing the tail wagging the dog recently is a question someone asked. They're referencing the endless argument. Why are you warming up to the tail wagging the dog lately? Okay? Because I live in reality. And as new information is presented, I change my analysis. You must also live in reality because the tail is wagging the dog right now. That doesn't mean that the dog is not excited about the tail wagging itself. Okay? The dog is certainly enthused. But ultimately, the tail is wagging the dog currently. Israel is in the driver's seat. I've explained this over and over again. And Israel has never been more in control of American foreign policy. Israel has never been more in control of American foreign policy than at this level, okay? And that is because for 47 years, America has been at quote-unquote war with the Islamic Revolution. Since the Islamic Revolution, America's been at war with Iran. Why did they never do this? Because the tail was never capable of wagging the dog. It's that simple. Every single time this has happened time and time again. If you think Israel didn't have an endless appetite for this kind of thing over the years, you would be wrong. You'd be delusional. Of course they wanted to do this. They've always wanted to do this. They've always urged America to get involved in this scheme, this devastating scheme. Okay? And as someone who has understood Mearsheimer's analysis and has leaned into it quite a bit about the power of the Israeli lobby, okay, I have still maintained the position that this is in America's material interest. This is a very different reality we live in now. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. New information comes in, and you have to reinterpret events as it stands. It's over. The notion of the unsinkable aircraft carrier is gone. It's over. Because if you look at the region right now, if you look at what's going on right now, I mean, you can come to that reality very quickly, right? 47 years of this, and Americans' outright refusal, which Mearsheimer will talk about right now. But the unsinkable aircraft carrier is utterly meaningless if the regional actors that it's supposed to control are gone, are destroyed, or on the verge of destruction. What do you think happens to the petrodollar if there's no more petroleum extraction in the region? It's over. This is not simply a misstep by American generals. They're straight up sleepwalking to the death of empire right now because Israel has deluded them into thinking that they could do this. It's done. And not a single competent person that even wants to defend American hegemony is saying we got to put an end to this right now. The Democrats are not even doing that. You must ask the question why they're not doing that.
Against Iran. And you want to remember in 2024, Joe Biden's last year as president, the Israelis twice, once in April and then second in October of that year, tried to trap Biden into going to war against Iran. And he refused to do it. And Trump is the first president who fell into.
Brother, we've been telling you the tail was wagging the dog for 2 years and you called us conspiratorial anti-Semites. Take your blinders off. Hey, I don't know if you noticed, but like Israel's campaign's impact on America was marginal, right? America clearly had the ambition, didn't care. Biden was allowing it to happen, and so was Donald Trump, because it didn't have the same kind of impact of waging war with Iran. Because the Palestinians are quite literally, unfortunately, if you're going to look at this with sober eyes, the Palestinians are, whether we like to admit it or not, incapable of militarily opposing Israel. They're just not. They are a hermetically sealed population that has been held captive by the apartheid state for generations. Okay? So yes, there is a difference between America continuing Israel's campaign upon the Palestinians, allowing Israel to blow up Lebanon, allowing Israel to take over militarily different parts of Syria. All of that actually played a role in Israel basically designing the battleground and claiming to America that Iran is too weak. This is our best opportunity. This will be the best opportunity in 47 years that we'll ever get. Not realizing that it wasn't the best opportunity at all. But until America actually said, you know what, we ball. Let's go in. Let's blow up Iran. Let's decapitate its leadership. Let's force them into a corner where they have no other option but to fight their way out of it and completely collapse the energy markets around the globe. Until this very moment, it was valid to say the only reason why America has this incredibly complex, incredibly pervasive web of influence in the Western world is because it was the unsinkable aircraft carrier. Until this very moment, you could have said that because the impact to the Western world was marginal. This is a different dynamic. I've said this over and over again. The last time America had the reins over its Middle Eastern policy, Barack Hussein Obama. And then Trump came in and Trump said, all right, Israel, go ahead. You do whatever you want to do. We'll follow along. Okay? That's what happened. But it still wasn't as impactful as this very moment. This was the final shoe to drop. This is it.
The trap. And of course, he did it last June during the 12-day war. You want to remember in the 12-day war, the Israelis by themselves started that conflict on June 13th, and it ended on June 25th. But on June 22nd, we bombed 3 nuclear targets in Iran. But it was a one-day bombing. We talked about one and done at the time. And you remember that when the evening came on June 22nd, the bombing was finished, President Trump declared victory. So although he got involved for the first time, it only looked like he was putting his ankle in the water, that he wasn't becoming deeply committed to fighting a war in Iran. But that all changed on February 28th. The United States and Israel together, what I like to refer to as the tag team, decided to attack Iran, and we are now in a war of attrition with the Iranians, in which case it's hard to see how this war ends. So Trump took the bait. And I think, to put it in more specific terms, I think basically that Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has been working overtime for decades now, literally decades, to get the United States to attack Iran for Israel, finally succeeded with Trump. As I said, there was a tiny step taken forward in that regard last June. But now Trump has jumped full body into the water.
Yep. And this is the OG tail wagging the dog guy. Why is he also agreeing with me, saying this time is different? Like, I've always maintained the position that it's both, right? If you have the unsinkable aircraft carrier theory on one side, which is Israel, right, in a resource-rich region, and you have the Israel lobby and its pervasive influence on the other side, I've always been an extreme fence-sitter centrist on both. I think one cannot exist without the other, unless you literally believe that, like, Jews have hypnosis capabilities, right? Like, they don't. You could not have such a complex web of influence in the Western world without being the warrior country that is going to dominate all these other regional actors at a moment's notice and be able to overtake Egypt if they need to do so, like they did in the past, and control the Suez Canal at the behest of Western states. An espionage, a country with espionage capabilities that are super brilliant. They're awesome. Mossad is the greatest, right? A country that has been able to do all of this stuff. Only then, after they have made themselves so valuable and so irreplaceable to Western imperialism, could they actually slowly but surely build a sophisticated network of influence peddling, unlike anything that people have seen ever before. And now they're cashing that. Now they're cashing it in, okay? They realize that their influence peddling capabilities are diminishing in the Western world because of the last 2.5 years of genocide. And now that their influence is waning in the Western world, they're like, we got to cash it in. One last big hurrah. We have the reins. We control American foreign policy in this region. Okay? We control the reins of American foreign policy in this region. We have controlled it since Trump won. Now we're going to do the unthinkable. Are you saying a U.S. aircraft carrier was sunk? No, man. There's two competing thoughts when it comes to analysis anti-Zionists. One is the unsinkable aircraft carrier theory, saying Israel as a nation state is basically an unsinkable aircraft carrier. We say that about the Philippines as well, right? The idea that Israel's value for America is actually infinite because it's an important military installation in the middle of a resource-rich region. So if these regional actors do not operate at the behest of American imperialism and Western imperialism, as they have done so at times, Israel can come in and, whip them into shape, destroy them militarily, destroy them through espionage, and just keep them in control. Because there's no complete assurance in the eyes of the Western world that the GCC, the Gulf states, are always going to play ball. Israel, on the other hand, will always play ball, is the assessment. That's one competing school of thought. I don't want to say who is like the most formative leader in this school of thought, because he may or may not have spent the last decade being butt buddies with a notorious pedophile. Okay? Then the other school of thought is the Mearsheimer theory, the Israel lobby theory, as in Israel actually does not work in convergence with American interests. It actually diverges from American interests. And the only reason why they are able to push America into endless military quagmires is because they have an incredibly sophisticated network of influence peddling. They can buy politicians like AIPAC and numerous other subsidiaries. They can create advocacy networks inside of our institutes of higher learning. So all of the fucking new graduates are chock full of Zionist propaganda and under the belief, the false notion that like Israel is the most important, most consequential country on the fucking planet. I think it's both. I think it doesn't work without the other. One does not work without the other. That's my assessment. And throughout time, as new information has come and as America has actually allowed Israel to do the unthinkable, which is strike Iran directly and engage Iran in such a devastating fashion that Iran had no other option but to fight back. Okay? No other option but to fight back. That now we are in a totally new dynamic where Israel is controlling American foreign policy. I don't have any fear of saying that out loud. You know why? Because Marco Rubio has said it out loud. Because Donald Trump has said it out loud. Because Lindsey Graham has said it out loud. So obviously, it would be fucking idiotic for me not to recognize what they're signaling. Now, part of the reason why they're saying that is because they want to engage in ass covering, right? That's an exit ramp for them because they also have this ambition. They're also stupid enough to think that they can come out of this successful, right? Because yes, as chatters have pointed out, for 47 years, we have wanted to dominate Iran. We wanted to destroy Iran because Iran could at any given point do what they're doing for the past 12 days, for the past 13 days. Okay? So I understand that like that is also an off-ramp for some of these Americans who have been agitating to do just this for the past 47 fucking years, right? So that if shit falls apart in a spectacular fashion and we pull the exit ramp out, we can just be like, yeah, it was those Jews that made us do it. And I think Republicans are they're holding their cards close to their chest, but they're saying they could potentially flip. Okay? It could get far more anti-Semitic in this country far faster than you think if Americans actually pull out of this Iranian quagmire and then start blaming Israel for it, even though they also wanted to fucking do it. So it's a bit of both. But as far as the analysis goes, while there was plenty of ambition in the United States of America as well by some in the leadership to do just this, it is, in my opinion, idiotic not to recognize that the thing that tipped us over into doing the unthinkable is Israel. Having a much more pliant administration to Israel, much more pliant to Israel's demands, was the icing on the top, the cherry on the top.
Yet you see, even with this sycophantic head of the Joint Chiefs, Kane, every time he's trotted out in front of the cameras, he doesn't look very happy. I think the military the Pentagon foresaw what is coming and is quite perplexed about how to deal with it.
I think that General Kane has actually behaved quite well here. You want to remember that when Trump came into office January of last year, January 2025, he fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown, and he brought General Kane out of retirement. Kane was only a 3-star general. He wasn't even a 4-star general. But Trump liked him, and Trump made him a 4-star general, and he made him the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, given that he was in effect Trump's general, that he owed his position to Donald Trump, you would think that he would tell Donald Trump what he wanted to hear about going to war against Iran. But on the contrary, what Kane did before the war, this is before February 28th, was he made it very clear to President Trump that we did not have a viable military option. So when you say that General Kane, every time he's trotted out, looks very uncomfortable, I think that's true. And I think there's a simple explanation for why he looks so uncomfortable. He knew from the get-go that this one was not going to work out the way Trump and Netanyahu thought that it was going to work out. And he understands that he is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he was the chairman when we entered this foolish war on February 28th, despite the fact that he had warned against it.
Is it too simplistic to say that Trump and Netanyahu naively believed that by taking out the supreme leader and some of the hierarchy, there would be regime change and the war would be over?
I think that's clearly the case with Trump. I think that was the argument that Netanyahu sold to Trump, and Trump liked the argument. I think given what happened in Venezuela, he thought that we had the ability to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. And when Bibi told him that the regime in Iran is weak and all we have to do is decapitate it and really hit hard on that first day.
This is literally just a perfect sequence of events. Like everything, all the cards were aligned so perfectly for this very moment. You have an idiotic administration hopped up on, grand dreams of engaging in military dominant warfare. You a Secretary of Defense, now called a Secretary of War, that's also willing to wage this idiotic campaign no matter what the cost is, without ever thinking about how it might blow up in their fucking faces. You have a successful leadership change that took place in Venezuela with Dan Kane's obvious, much more competent military operation. Okay? That was a major reason, I think, that Trump was excited at doing the Venezuela thing again. But this time, the difference was Israel didn't want to do that at all. Because the reality is, I don't think that you could have actually found a more pliant IRGC to deal with if you were to take out the Ayatollah. Because they just do not understand how the Islamic Republic works at all. But also, Israel had no ambitions in a regime change at all. They wanted complete destabilization from the jump because they were much more sober in their assessment. They were much better in their analysis. They knew that this would be fucking devastating. They knew that this would be devastating for the Gulf. They knew this would be devastating for America as well. But they knew they could just keep throwing more bodies at the fucking problem until they just try and destabilize the Iranian government and create a failed state. The only miscalculation here was, in my opinion, the only miscalculation from the Israeli side was how much discontent they can actually foment, how much they can activate a popular mobilization on the ground with the Kurdish militias, maybe the Balochis, maybe some Sunni groups here and there, right? They were wrong on that assessment. They thought they had enough of a resilient propaganda apparatus inside of Iran that would be able to activate people, that would be able to mobilize people to create popular forces on the ground that you could steadily ship weapons to, right, in secret, so that, they could create a Libya-style condition in Iran. They were wrong on that front. I think part of the reason why they were wrong on that front is because of the last month's incidents. There's a reason why Iran is shutting off the internet inside of Iran, because they don't want any kind of fucking destabilization to take place right now. Okay? Hasan, why are you only now just turning against Israel? Are you overdosing on heroin? Heroin overdosing. Are you overdosing on heroin right now? Only now turning on Israel? While you were shitting in your diapers, I was yelling about Israel.
Day or two, that the regime would crumble and we would end up with a pro-American, pro-Israeli regime.
You were pro-Israel 5 years ago?
I think.
Sure, buddy.
Netanyahu was very successful at telling Trump that story. And Trump is not exactly surrounded by wise advisors.
Is that true? Man, Anon, you're my least favorite fucking baiter, dude. You know what? I'm not even going to fucking ban that other chat. I'm going to give you a week off. You annoy me more than anybody else in this fucking chat. You know that? You are because you do it from this way where you're you play the role of a stupid. And I've seen your I've heard your voice in the chat far too many fucking times to know you know better, okay? The other guy is acting brand new. You do the thing that pisses me off more than anything else. Oh, I guess he has a point. No, he doesn't. One of the first things I saw from you was the coverage of the Great March of Return in 2018. I know. I've been doing this for years and years and years.
Save for General Kane, who would tell him otherwise. So he fell into the trap. Now, Netanyahu's a more complicated case. One could argue that Netanyahu understood that a decapitation strike wouldn't work, that this would not be a quick and decisive victory, and that instead what he was trying to do was trap Trump into a long war, in which case
he did this.
Iran.
He did this. Oh, you guys are losers. Are losers. Kill yourselves. Duh, you guys are losers. The KKK guy goes, dang, you got to admit they low-key cooked you. My least favorite type of baiter, okay? I hate this guy, which Anon is being, almost as much as I hate this guy, which the first guy is being, right?
Would be destroyed. In other words, Netanyahu understood that the regime would not fall quickly, but once we committed to fighting the war, we would have no choice but to see it through, and that's the situation that we're in now. So that's a possible argument. It's hard to know for sure whether it's true, but it's also possible, just having watched Netanyahu over time, that he too bamboozled himself into believing that the Iranian regime was fragile and that we could easily affect regime change. You know, he's been saying that for a long time, as you well know, Chris. And sometimes when people repeat particular arguments, after a while, they even begin to believe their own arguments, although they initially did not. So it's possible that Bibi fooled himself, or it's possible that he was just tricking Trump into getting into this war.
Yeah.
Well, the Israeli goal is different from the American goal. The Americans want regime change. The Israelis want to create a failed state. They want to fragment Iran the same way they fragmented and destroyed Iraq, the same way they turned Libya into a failed state. Those are very different goals.
I agree with that. But the Israelis don't advertise that fact. I think the Israeli view is if they got regime change and they got a pro-American / pro-Israel regime in place, that then they wouldn't have to worry that much about destroying the country. But I think that they probably understand that that's not going to happen, that Iran's not going away. And given that Iran...
Chatter saying they sound like you. Brother, who do you think also plays a formative role in my analysis? Yes, these are the men, okay? Sometimes I even have the pleasure to be able to interview them. Yeah, no shit.
Going away.
I sound like Mearsheimer.
Let's wreck it. Let's do to Iran what we did to Syria. And then we're done with Iran. We can turn to Turkey and break Turkey apart as well.
Well, let's talk about a country that does have a strategy, which is in the United States, and that's Iran. And what I found interesting is that rather than confront the American military might, i.e. the ships, and they have decided quite astutely and quite methodically to destroy the economic machinery, not only in the Gulf, but globally.
Yeah, the Iranians are pursuing a smart strategy. And to go back to General Kane has made a number of comments about the Iranians that make clear that he respects their ability to strategize in this war. He is not contemptuous of the Iranians. When you listen to Hedges and Trump talk, they talk about the Iranians like they're a bunch of country bumpkins and we're the strategic geniuses. And not only do we have an advantage in material power, we Americans have an advantage in how to think strategically. I think that's not the case. And I think if you listen carefully to General Kane, he's making that point. We are up against a formidable adversary. Given what you said, given what General Kane said, they have a lot of cards to play. The key here, Chris, is that Iran has a huge arsenal of short-range ballistic missiles and drones that it can use against the Gulf states. And the Gulf states present a target-rich environment. It's easy to use those drones and those short-range ballistic missiles to do great damage to all of the countries in the Gulf, including Saudi Arabia. The Iranians also have a lot of long-range missiles and also long-range drones that can hit Israel. Now, they've not done much of that up to now. It's very important to understand that in the 12-day war last June, the Iranians fought almost exclusively against Israel. They did not target American military bases in the region, and they did not target the Gulf states. In this war, they're targeting Israel, American military in the region, and the Gulf states. And in the first part of the war, up to pretty much now, they've concentrated mainly on attacking American installations and attacking the Gulf states. But they have announced that they are now beginning to switch the focus, and they're going to concentrate much more on attacking Israel. And they have the long-range ballistic missiles, and they have drones, which they can use to hit Israel. And the problem that the Israelis face, and of course this is a problem that the Americans face, is that we only have a finite number of defensive missiles that can be used to shoot down those incoming ballistic missiles. And even when we use those defensive missiles, they oftentimes don't hit the incoming Iranian ballistic missile. So we have this situation in the Gulf and in Israel where the Iranians have the capability to pound all of those countries for a long period of time. And there's nothing we can do about it. And in fact, as time goes by, our ability to shoot down those missiles, shoot down the drones, decreases. It doesn't flatline, and it certainly doesn't increase. It decreases. So the Iranians have a serious set of military options against us. And what this means, Chris, is that as we walk up the escalation ladder, and that's what we're likely to do if we can't find an off-ramp, and I don't think we're going to find an off-ramp. If we don't find an off-ramp, I think what we'll do is march up the escalation ladder. And of course, Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump will say we have escalation dominance as you go up that escalation ladder. But I don't think that's true. I think the Iranians have powerful cards to play, and therefore we are in a really terrible situation.
What does that escalation ladder look like? What will that mean? They're already carrying out virtually saturation bombing of Tehran.
Not yet. They're pounding Iran. There's no question about that. And they're pounding Tehran.
What is this? Breaking. President Trump has rejected an offer from Russia's President Putin to move Iran's enriched uranium to Russia in a deal to end the war. Details include in a phone call with Trump, Putin proposed moving... What the fuck? In a phone call, Putin proposed moving Iran's enriched uranium to Russia as a part of a deal to end the war. Securing Iran's 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium remains a top priority for the U.S. Dude, a lot of people just say, never mind, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say it. Fuck it. I'm not going to joke. I don't want to joke too much because there's a lot of people who will yell at me. Okay. If you think America is Zionist-occupied government, you haven't even understood where Vladimir Putin is at, is what I was going to say if I were to make a joke about this, okay? But it is very funny that, like, this is such a funny assessment, like, as though Iranian denuclearization is a priority at all. Like, it's like a very stupid song and dance. This is not a real concern. Wake up, please. Like, who is this for? Who is actually for? Who actually believes this? At this stage, who actually believes that the real concern from the Americans is the limitations on Iranian nuclear enrichment? Like, are you fucking stupid? 2016 should have shown everyone around the world that this was not the concern, okay? Because as far as accomplishing that goal, Barack Obama succeeded. There is a multilateral cooperative agreement, including China and Russia, in said multilateral agreement, alongside European allies, to completely defang the Iranian nuclear program. It was under complete control of the International Atomic Agency, International Atomic Energy Agency. It should have stopped everyone from ever talking about this as a serious objective of the Americans when Donald Trump ripped that apart. And even back then, just as Trump is known to do, he did not actually turn around and deliver a convincing strategy. He just said, nope, I don't want it anymore. Barack Obama did it. And therefore, I don't like it. Okay? It's not like he said, Iran, we have serious objections to the denuclearization agreement because Iran is not abiding by the good faith agreement at all. He briefly brought it up, but the International Atomic Energy Agency was like, no, they are. We literally have cameras. We have cameras in their refinement facilities. We know they're abiding by it. We sent investigators to the facilities. We know that they're still abiding by it, even after you ripped up the contract. Because Iran did. Iran, contrary to the way that American media covers Iran, and I've said this over and over again, regardless of its domestic repression, when it comes to foreign policy, Iran is so restrained. Iran has been one of the most restrained foreign actors. Iran was even more restrained than Russia was. Always. Restrained to a fucking fault. Restrained against the Israeli incursions, again, to a fault, and certainly foolish and naive to think that America would ever negotiate with them after America showed over and over again that they had no interest in negotiating with them at all. If anything, I think Iran, and specifically Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, believed till their final moments in the aircraft carrier theory rather than the Israeli lobby theory. Okay? That led to their own demise. Literally. Till his last moment, Hassan Nasrallah was probably sitting in the bunker with all of the fucking Quds Force generals going, you know, they won't do this. America will stop them, right? Nope. Securing Iran's 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium remains a top priority for the U.S. Trump has acknowledged for the first time that Russia is aiding Iran in the war. The U.S. position is we need to see the uranium secured, a U.S. official said. This is not about uranium. This is Vladimir Putin offering Donald Trump an exit ramp. This is Vladimir Putin being like, come on, we'll help you out. And Donald Trump is so much a flesh puppet of Benjamin Netanyahu that he's like, nah, we're going to keep going.
But they have not killed more than 1,500 people. I mean, it's terribly regrettable that they've even killed one person, much less 1,500 or whatever the number is. But they have not gone that far. The Israelis and the Americans have not gone that far up the escalation ladder. And in a very important way, there's evidence that the Americans are discouraged.
Why would Putin help Trump? Regional stability, leaning into a much more favorable bargain for Iran. This is very helpful. There's the other, look, the day after this war ends, and I don't know how it will, but the day after this war ends, the capacity of American empire will have taken such a significant hit that no matter what happens, if the IRGC is still in charge, which for all intents and purposes, that's the most likely scenario, Russia and China will harden Iran into the bulwark of, I guess, like Eastern interests, if you want to call it that, if you want to put them under one banner. Because Russia is not communist, so I'm not going to say it's the communist flank, right? Like anti-Western interests. They will, and America knows this too, and it's like too late for them to get out of the situation in some ways. But this will, because I suspect that whoever is in charge of Iran going forward. And I say whoever because we don't know if the current leadership structure will exist. Israel might try to assassinate and successfully assassinate the leadership again, right? But ultimately, the IRGC seemingly will stay intact unless there is a complete fail state, right? And if the IRGC is intact, they will play ball with China. They will play ball. They've been playing ball with Russia already, but they will definitely play ball with China. They will get trained on Chinese weapons, and they will harden their protection over the region. China, I suspect, will use Iran to gain a stronger foothold over the Gulf states. By way of Iran, China will probably secure a cooperative agreement with the Gulf states. They've already, pre-October 7, they already had made inroads, right? They secured a peace negotiation between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This could be a part of the reason why there was so much strategic restraint on the Iranian side. Because if you recall, I covered it at the time, China went into the region and said, you guys are done. You're going to make peace. Saudi Arabia and Iran are going to make peace. And they did. It was successful. And then October 7 happened, and that just kind of, bricked the whole process. This also goes along with China's lack of interest in emancipatory needs of the people. They don't give a fuck about the Palestinians, obviously. Let's be real. But they do want regional stability, and they do want more control or more influence over this, the oil-producing giants in the area. If American intervention in the region has only led to Israeli domination and unlimited bloodshed, and China presents a much more tolerant, much more peaceful approach as a massive superpower that's emerging from the American chaos, I think the day after this stuff is over, China will basically come in and say, we're hardening Iran and we're securing, securing a truly stable area. They can't do that without eviscerating Israel, by the way, just so you understand, because Israel will go back to playing a formative role in destabilizing the region at the behest of American empire if they have the capacity to do so. This is part of the reason why I say Zionism will most likely end in my lifetime. Okay? This is why I say it. Yeah, the Belt and Road Initiative will turn into the Belt and Ass Initiative.
The Israelis for going too far and too fast up because we understand that the Iranians have a second strike capability. The Israelis don't care that much because the Israelis.
This is the funniest. Wait, hold on. This is my favorite counter. Won't they just call China anti-Semitic? Oh no. What will China do if they're called anti-Semitic? Oh no. Brother, that shit don't even matter for a fucking Twitch streamer at this point in the United States of America. We're the only place where that had any mileage whatsoever. Stop Anti-Semitism is going to do a country ranking this time and put China at the top of the directory. And then they'll know.
Israelis want to see us get deeply involved in this war and destroy Iran. They'd like us to level every city in Iran, break the country apart. But Trump does not, at this point, want to go down that road. But I think what happens here, Chris, as we march up the escalation ladder, is that we target civilian areas. We end up killing larger and larger numbers of people. And furthermore, we begin to flirt with the idea of tearing apart Iran's petroleum infrastructure and maybe their desalination plants as well. We begin to really try to throttle the regime, to strangle it. And again, this involves not just simply killing people, which I think if you get desperate enough, you'll do. The Israelis, of course, would have no problem doing that. And ultimately, I think if we got desperate enough, we would not either. But again, the problem is we do those things, the Iranians will retaliate. If we go after energy infrastructure in Iran.
How does North Korea and China have such a great relationship with Russia and Russia being polar opposite of ideology? Brother, what are you talking about? It's because just as the PFLP aligns with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and aligns with Hamas under the banner of anti-Zionism and the emancipatory need, okay, these countries have been forced into hardline allegiances because they are against American empire. That's it. Ideology doesn't matter when your primary need is ridding yourself of this incredibly, unimaginably powerful force that has dominated your interests for decades. The DPRK would not exist. We cut the country in half. You understand that, right? There's no such thing as North Korea. There's only Korea. But the reason why there is a DPRK and a Republic of Korea is because we severed the country in half. We wanted to set up a bulwark against the USSR, against the Soviets. Do you understand? So, of course, these countries are aligned with one another. What the fuck does one of the most anti-communist countries on the fucking planet, Iran, have to do with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea? Why is an American socialist talking about the emancipatory needs of a country that has literally thrown socialists and communists in jail for years? Think. Because first and foremost, the primary need for these countries is sovereignty and dignity. And they will align with one another on those boundaries every single time. Because from their perspective, their enemies are far worse. The ideological differences can always be set aside. Then why are you defending them? I defend the peoples. I defend the sovereignty of nations in the periphery. I do not care about American imperialism. I understand, unlike many people in this community as well, many people in the imperial core, that in order to be an anti-imperialist, if you want to be an anti-imperialist, you have to recognize the need, the emancipatory need of nation states and their people. I also understand that this doesn't help the regular Americans anyway. American military conquest does not help the emancipatory needs of the American population either. Except Gulf sovereignty. What are you fucking... Oh my God, this guy is still back. Still talking about Gulf sovereignty. The Gulf nation states have no sovereignty. As long as there are American military bases in the Gulf nations, they don't have real sovereignty. You are finding that out in real time and yet still chirping at me. Same guy from yesterday. What sovereignty do the Gulf nation states have? Do you think they like being missile sponges for Israel? They were the ones who invited them. Oh my God, he's still... Bro. This chatter is doing the NATO argument while it's collapsing. Okay? That's awesome. This is an awesome attitude to have. Thank you. You should take this up with the Gulf regional leaders. You should take this up with the Gulf nationals in general and see how they feel about it. He's doing the NATO argument, but for the Gulf states. He's like, bro, you don't understand. Lithuania invited NATO. Okay, Hasan, the GCC can also work with Iran. I mean, it can. It can, especially if there's a different world power that is keeping shit intact and offering security assurances, that one not being America, but instead China. Bro, the Emirati nationals would probably support this chatter. Okay. The Gulf nation states are understanding that American security assurances mean nothing. It just means you are a missile sponge for Israel, for Israel's ambition. If you don't think that they recognize that calculation, you're not reading what they are saying out loud right now. Sure, they're mad at Iran for bombing their country and ruining potentially billions of dollars of energy investments and trillions of dollars of investments they're putting in to make the Gulf this habitat for some of the worst cryptocurrency pedophiles, right? They're not happy about that. Tourism is gone. No more Andrew Tate in Dubai. However, they also recognize what triggered this, as it had not happened for 47 fucking years. Why did it happen now? Like, I hate this Orientalism shit. It's Orientalism? No, brother, you just fucking hate Iran, and that's what it is, okay? You have been deluded into thinking that the Gulf states being a slave to Israel and America is actually a far better outcome from them. But it's funny to say that not like 14, 15 days ago, but it's funny to say that after the Gulf nation states have turned into, once again, missile sponges at the behest of Israel and America, okay? That's a hilarious position to be in right now. Your advocacy would be a little bit more understandable, even if it was delusional back then as well, right? But it's so funny that like the closest association that Gulf states have, like direct association that Gulf nation states have had, is the UAE, okay? The United Arab Emirates are directly in line with Israel. They have been actively petitioning to increase Israel's influence in the region, so much so that even Saudi Arabia started getting pissed off at the UAE, okay? Look at the United Arab Emirates. Is Israel protecting them? No. Israel does not give a fuck about any Arab whatsoever. The GCC could have a much easier time treating a sovereign nation in the region like an ally or potentially just a neighbor than they would being American missile bases, American missile sponges that will inevitably only sit there of Israel's expansionist ambitions. They also recognize that Israel doesn't give a fuck about the Gulf states at all. Even if they destroy the Gulf states, Israel still doesn't Israel still doesn't care about that. They literally benefit from a weakened Gulf.
The Iranians will go after more and more energy infrastructure.
Like that also proves Iran will also bomb the whole region instead of focusing on Israel. Bro, you have a significant mental setback here, and I don't know how to reach this. I don't know how to reach across and like pummel your brain with the actual information that you should be seeing right now. There are American military bases on every single one of these fucking Gulf states. Of course, if America and Israel are bombing Iran, they are going to bomb back the fucking military bases. What country would say, oh no, we have to let these Gulf states continue fucking operating their American military bases so they can destroy the country with, better ease? Are you fucking stupid? What's wrong with your brain? Hamad al-Thani, Qatar's previous emir, father of the current emir, Hamad bin Jazim. Did I get it right? Am I saying it correctly? Qatari cat, is this correct? Stop spinning. No, he's the former prime minister, Hamad bin Jazim bin Jabbar. I don't care. Stop wiggling. There's a new hate train coming from the dumb veterans of Twitch from American Dad. He's adding Dan Clancy. I'd have YouTube ready. Sure, whatever. This war in our region, like all other wars, will come to an end. But there are lessons and morals that the Gulf Cooperation Council states must draw from it. The most important of which is solidarity, alliance, and unity of word and stance. For there is now no alternative for the Council states but to establish an effective, real, and on-the-ground military security alliance akin to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in which Saudi Arabia plays the most crucial role as the largest state. Given the importance of the matter, the study and preparation for it must begin now, without waiting for the war to end. And for that, the Council states must, with determination and without delay or hesitation, transcend all the disputes between them in preservation of our shared interest to keep the Council strong and cohesive, to ensure the independence of its peoples and states, and to prioritize the general Gulf interest over the Qatari interests. We must not wait for the fighting to end either. Rather, the Council states should immediately begin establishing and developing an advanced, coordinated, and planned base of military and electronic industries among themselves, so that they can defend their peoples against aggression and preempt and deter any attacks targeting them before they occur. Our states possess the necessary geography, resources, and funds for this. Yeah, except they don't have the necessary manpower and the willingness to do this. Okay? And perhaps we can take the lesson from Iran, which, despite the siege, managed to develop for itself an advanced missile industry base, which regrettably it has bombarded our states and aggressed against them without right. And since the Council States did not start this war, nor did they want it in the first place, and were seeking a solution between the United States and Iran, our states must not bear the economic and political repercussions that will result from the war. Israel, as the one that ignited the spark of the war, must bear responsibility before us, before the world, and before the United States. Isn't it crazy how everyone is saying the same thing, by the way? The Gulf states are saying, America, you have to stop Israel. I'm saying, America, you have to decouple from Israel and actually regain control over the situation. Iran is basically saying the same. And yet, America's like, nah, this situation is great. Don't you know that we are going to actually bring about Armageddon and Jesus Christ is going to come back on earth and wage war in Megiddo against Satan's forces? I'm a really smart guy, and this is what I truly believe. For this war was started by Israel to make itself the upper hand in the region militarily, economically, and politically, as it declares every day. Yeah, that's the other thing. Israel is also offering salt to the wound, insult to injury, by routinely fucking stating over and over again that this war has made Israel a superpower, not only in the region, but around the world, which is fucking ridiculous. They are not. You shut off the fucking money faucet. You no longer give Israel the protective cover that it has benefited from endlessly, and Israel becomes a much more restrained nation state. Okay? Israel, tiny country. Israel, size of New Jersey. Therefore, we in the Council States must stand as one front, whether towards Israel or toward Iran. For Iran will remain our neighbor forever, even though we differ with it and reject what it has done and is doing against us. And as a result, by the way, I'm sorry, but I do find this kind of mealy-mouthed bullshit to be really insincere when, like, they turn around and they say, like, oh, how could you have done this to us, Iran? We are your neighbors. It's like, bitch, you have American military bases with American radar installations that protect Israel and American military bases that have American fighter jets that would bomb Iran at the behest of Israel. What the fuck do you mean? You have American Marines. You have American military installed in your country. You have American espionage facilities installed in your country that's spying on your neighboring country of Iran. What the fuck are they supposed to do? Of course they're going to fucking bomb those military installations. They're at war. This kind of like both sides bullshit is hilarious from the Gulf states. It's very sweet that they were benefiting from aligning openly with Israel, with the Abraham Accords over and over again, only to now do this woe is me bullshit like I am small bean. We are the small bean countries. We are the small bean petro-capitalists. How dare you do this to us, Iran? We mustn't wage war. We are neighbors. It's like, okay, well, why did you do the buildup to begin with? What the fuck were you expecting? This is why Iran hates Gulf more than Israel? No, it doesn't. Also, listen, why is it that the nations that have been bombed the hardest are the ones who are not speaking as loudly in their condemnations of Iran? Ask the question why that is the case. Why is fucking France chirping harder and celebrating America's initial actions and also condemning only Iran, whereas the Gulf states are condemning Israel and Iran? Think. They're the ones getting bombed. France is not getting bombed. I mean, they lost one soldier in Iraq yesterday. But up until that point, their casualties were zero. Gulf states have actually lost billions of dollars. Why do they have a stronger approach? Why do they have a stronger statement for Israel for starting this than the French do, than the Italians do, than everyone else in the European nation states do? They're not being bombed. Think. Part of it is because, and I told you this over and over again, they also want there to be a sovereign Iran. They would much prefer a sovereign Iran than no Iran, than a failed state in Iran. 93 million people. Because they also understand that a sovereign Iran can at least keep Israel in check. They like that there's a defanged Iran. Iran no longer has the IRGC all over the region fighting against, the Saudi-backed militia groups. Oftentimes the Salafist groups, Al-Qaeda, things like that. But no Iran means no Iran, and the region means Israel does whatever it wants. If it wants to take Saudi Arabia, it takes Saudi Arabia, and America will let it happen. Okay? They understand that. That's why they're saying Israel is also at fault here. Are you saying Gulf states shouldn't talk about Iran and tell it to bomb us more, lol? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that their calculation is different than those who are far removed from the conflict, even though their suffering is much greater, because they also understand that there's a day after. They have to live there. They have to live in the region. They can't park their assets elsewhere and fuck off. America can. They have to live with Israel being more belligerent. How do you not understand this? This is a calculation that they have to make. Anyway, likewise, Israel is not far from us. Look here, therefore, we in the Council States must stand as one front, whether towards Israel or toward Iran. For Iran will remain our neighbor forever, even though we differ with it and reject what is done to us and doing against us, and as a result, consider an enemy of us today. A matter that our states must discuss and agree upon to determine the best approach for dialogue with Iran and what we accept or reject from its policies, so that our states do not become sacrificial lambs every time fighting or a misunderstanding erupts between Israel, America, and Iran. Likewise, Israel is not far from us, and we may need to reach an understanding with it, but not according to its declared policies, rather in accordance with the principles of good neighborliness that serve Palestinian rights in the occupied Arab territories and our shared interests. All of this calls for purity of intentions among the Council states and for the criterion to be the law, reason, and our shared interests, not personal and immediate interests under any circumstance or any reason. And I have no doubt about the intentions of the leaders of the Council states, but what it's required now is that we rise to the level of the historical responsibilities that these circumstances impose upon us. And what is surprising is that we have not heard a strong stance from several Arab states towards what the Council states are facing, as those states prefer to turn a blind eye and commit to neutrality. Oh, really? What about when those states were fucking falling apart, when the Gulf states turned a blind eye and committed to, neutrality? Every single, I'm sorry to say this, guys, but every single Arab nation has shanked one another at a different point. Okay? That's it. That's the reason. And it was all because they thought they could get an upper hand, and they thought things would remain stable as long as they were servile to the interests of Israel and America. Now they can't play that game any longer. That's it. That's why everything is fucking collapsing. Do you understand? The worst offender is obviously UAE, who doesn't even try to present themselves as a neutral party, but directly a servant of Israel. And what is surprising is that we've not heard a strong stance from other Arab states towards the Gulf. Yeah. Why is Iraq not saying anything is really funny. The reason why, I think, depending on how the cards fall, the criticism of Israel you hear from countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and even the UAE sometimes is more about politics than it is about genuine concern from the leadership. In my opinion, their populations are anti-Israel. Their leaders are largely pro-Israel. So they do this song and dance while continuing normalization. Exactly. But now Israel has delivered a devastating blow to their actual economic interests. So the attitude has shifted dramatically. If you fuck up the money, if you molest the money, all of a sudden, the dynamic is very different. Because in the past, like Abraham Accords is fine. Like a pathway towards normalizing with Israel is like, from their calculation, fine. They can just like keep their population at bay while writing sternly worded letters about how Palestinian sovereignty is important to them. Meanwhile, they're doing under the table deals. They were already doing that before the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords was just basically a solidification of that normalized relationship, right? And Yahya Sinwar looked at that calculation and knew that the Palestinians were written out of that completely. And that's how October 7 happened. And I think Israel also knew that October 7 was going to happen, right? It's impossible for them not to know with all their surveillance capabilities. But they were so hubristic as to, they were demonstrating such hubris that they thought, oh, it'll be fine. We'll use this as an opportunity to finally fucking purge all of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and solidify our control over the West Bank and move on with our greater Israel project. And no one will stand in our way because this will give us the just cause to do it. And they made an error. Yahya Sinwar's error was that he thought that this would actually lead. Yahya Sinwar's error was he thought that Iran would be backed into a corner and would not demonstrate the restraint that they did, because they would recognize that their regional assets will be destroyed in the process and they will have a much weaker position. So they'll be forced into action against Israel, doing what they're doing right now, but, a couple months into October 7. right? That didn't happen. Hassan Nasrallah didn't commit to the same degree, and neither did Iran. And in the process, the decades-long campaign of building this axis of resistance was slowly but surely picked apart piece by piece with, endless American munitions. I think historians in the future will look back at this moment as the pivot point. Almost the entire Middle East has been set alight. Yahya Sinwar's premonition of a regional religious war that would burn everything green and dry has come to pass. This is a real turning point, unlike Charlie Kirk's assassination.
In the Gulf, in Gulf states, if desalination plants, they'll go after desalination plants in places like Saudi Arabia and Israel itself. I think the Israelis have 4 or 5 big desalination plants that they depend heavily on. And I think the Iranians will be incentivized to take them out if we, or the Israelis, or both of us go after their desalination plants. So you can see that as we go up the escalation ladder, the Iranians will go up with us. And I don't see how you can make the case that we have escalation dominance in any meaningful way.
Yeah, this analysis is pretty sound. I read this already, talking about Yahya Sinwar and what the calculation was from his perspective.
Especially when you take into account the fact that the historical record is quite clear here that countries can suffer enormous amounts of punishment in these sorts of air campaigns, and the population does not rise up against the government and overthrow it. And in fact, what happens in most of those cases, if not all those cases, is that the population rallies around the flag. So if we think, or the Israelis think, that killing Iranian civilians is going to put pressure on...
This is the same shit Jiang says, but because he says Illuminati word, he's a crank. Yes, brother, exactly. Because his analysis is not backed by solid fundamentals. Yes. And if your analysis is not backed by a solid fundamentals, or anchored by like a understandable, decipherable worldview that still pertains to the material realities, and instead a whole bunch of hokum like Illuminati shit, then yeah, you're a crank. It's so ridiculous that there are still predictive history defenders here after he literally has said things like Jews are responsible for Islam, and that Iran is going to do Pax Islamica. He's like 90% of the way there. He's always like he delivers a very convincing response. His predictions actually are not that different from the things that I have said as well. But then the last fucking 10% of his analysis is fucking insane. You can arrive at a correct assessment while still, it's like Alex Jones, okay? Alex Jones is right when he said attack helicopters and people are going to get black bagged and put inside of FEMA facilities. He was right about that. Mass surveillance, he was right about that. But whatever the fuck he was anchoring his opinion off of was like lizard people, okay? And of course, that's the reason why in a long enough timeline, you watch him unwind and you watch him fucking come up with like insane, grand, fabulous conspiracies that are totally ridiculous.
On the government to quit the war. I think that's
such an uncharitable reading. You've literally been catching up to Jiang. I've been catching up to Jiang, 31-month subscriber. You are literally getting mad at Jiang clips the same way people clip you. Oh my God. Oh my God. I have to purge this community of all of the fucking Jimmy Dore style freaks, please. Oh my God. I just need a whiteboard, I think. That'll be incredibly convincing for these guys. Maybe our community is actually kind of dumb. Yes, there are. Listen, this community is comprised of people that are heterodox thinkers, okay? Because socialism, communism, anarchism in the Western world is not a normal ideology that people share, okay? It's not the same as China, okay, where the norm is to be like, yeah, I'm learning about Marxist-Leninism in college. I'm living in a country that is controlled by a communist party. We live in the heart of capital. We live in the heart of capitalism. And therefore, a lot of people, if they don't anchor their worldview in dialectical materialism, end up finding themselves in the throes of cranks. Okay? And this is a very large community that has, a lot of unorthodox values, and therefore some of them are finding themselves in the throes of the people who don't offer all of the soundest analysis. I admit he gets into crazy ideas in history class, but they are silly, but the analysis is good. Okay. I've been saying Xiang is like the Joe Rogan of Geopol, dumb guy, smart guy, and you collabing with him would unironically bring a ton of new people open to 101 radicalization. I mean, I want to talk to him. I've reached out to him because I want to understand like where he's coming from, because like from what I understand, yeah, like this one is crazy. He said Israel and Germany are going to be the great superpowers. America done. China done. The next great empires, Germany, Japan, Israel. Not because they're powerful now, but because they've been destroyed before. Humiliation is the greatest teacher in history. The nations that suffer the most are building the world that comes next. In a lot of these circumstances, like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of those Twitter accounts, right? It reminds me of those Twitter accounts that make predictions, right? Like a million predictions, and then delete the predictions that they made that look silly. Okay? Do you understand? Because the predictions that are made that are silly can always be deleted. Or in this case, if you have a faucet of videos that you're putting out there that are reaching like peak virality because all the right ones are reaching people's attention, right? Like Nick Fuentes does this very well too. Nick Fuentes one week will say Jeffrey Epstein was based, and the next week that he'll come out and be like, I'm done with Donald Trump because he's Jeffrey Epstein's slave. People see the first video, they don't see the second one, or people see the second video, they don't see the first one, and they go, wow, this Nick Fuentes guy is kind of based. People do this all the time. Okay? I like his content. I think he's very entertaining. Can you steel man Zhang's argument about there not being enough evidence to prove that the Holocaust happened? I didn't even know that he had a fucking video where he was denying the Holocaust. One of the most well-documented atrocities on the fucking planet. That is insane. What? And you are exaggerating again? I didn't even say he has a video such as that. I'm just responding to what someone told me in the chat.
Of the Jewish race in Europe, okay? So we don't actually have any concrete evidence for the Holocaust, okay? So one piece of evidence for
I knew there was something up when he said secret societies in the interview with Cristobal on Breaking Points. If I learned one thing this year, right?
I need to see the full video. As a person who watched Zhang's lectures for hours, he's definitely cuckoo. If you watch his videos on religion and start a civilization, he equivocates religion and science. He's a master of mysticizing. He also does post hoc rationalization to readjust quite a bit after his predictions fail. I mean, I know he talked to Sneeko. He also talked to Richard Spencer. But like, I just thought that's because he's all over the place. He's just trying to get the word out to the best of his ability, and he's Chinese, so maybe he doesn't have internet, That's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, he probably don't have internet. Because like, this is the same dynamic with like, the Bangladeshi unks, right? That I talk about all the time, the WhatsApp unks. They fucking love Nick Fuentes and they love Tucker Carlson. Because like, they don't see the stuff that Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson says about them. They only see the good stuff. They only see the stuff that they say about Israel. And they're like, oh shit, this guy's brilliant. This guy's really sticking it to the man, So for a lot of people, they don't see the full scope of the commentary, and they just see bits and pieces, and they just get stuck on it, and they develop like in some ways like a parasocial a parasocial association with this content. I don't want to do a takedown of Professor Jiang. I want to talk to Professor Jiang. I don't think he will talk to me because I have kind of called him a crank before, but it's just like, I know you were speaking as a hypothetical Nick Fuentes first-time watcher. Please clarify that you weren't saying you find Fuentes entertaining. I don't. I'm saying that other people only see certain clips, and then they find Nick Fuentes to be brilliant or entertaining, or on their side because of the clips that they see. And people will say all these clips are out of context, except you fail to consider that I've talked to the people that have interviewed Professor Chung. Shouldn't you know whether he's a Holocaust denier before asking him on? No. I'm competent enough to be able to have a conversation with someone if they say they're a Holocaust denier, to like ask them how the fuck they arrived at that conclusion.
There are different names for these people. You can call them the Illuminati. And the Illuminati are composed of three major groups, okay? You have the Jesuits, who control the Vatican. You have the Sephardim Frankists, which control the modern state of Israel today. And you have the Freemasons, which control the national security apparatus of the United States. And they believe that Israel, this war in the Middle East, is key to the end times in creating heaven on earth. So it's almost like a script that they're following, even though it doesn't make any geopolitical sense. Okay, so I would say that these three are the best reasons why this is happening.
Wow. Soccer. Wow. Oh, dude, I fucking love cranks so much. Cranks are the best, dude. They are the best. Where is the lie? No, it's all correct. Yes. No, you're right. It's the Frankists. It's the Rothschilds, brother.
I'm not sure if this statistic is correct. You can tell me if this is correct or not, right? But apparently 20% of all American white girls in their 20s are on OnlyFans, something like that.
Like, what the fuck? What's the number of white women in their 20s in the USA? Let's see what that number is. White women represent roughly 56% of the 18 to 64 demographic. Come on, give me just a fucking number, man. Why can't you just spit out a number? Oh, this skeptics website did the math. Okay. What is this? I have not been able to find reliable statistics supporting the claim that 1 of 5 white American women in their 20s are on OnlyFans, either as creators or as users. Available statistics seem much smaller. For example, some estimates suggest about 2% of American women aged 18 to 45 are creators on OnlyFans, which is far below 20%. The platform reportedly has around 2 million creators worldwide, with the majority being women. If the 20% figure were true, it would imply millions of young American women in that demographic are creating OnlyFans content. Bro, I was excited when I first saw him and was talking about using game theory for predicting the future. I thought he was going to actually do some game theory, and it was just his speculation based on a lot of unconventional but true statements. The game theory is just a scenario with interests of some of the parties he lists beforehand. It sort of makes sense to the listener who is primed into believing his sensational speculations. I mean, yeah, if what is anchoring his worldview is like Frankists that control Israel and Jesuits that control the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and all this other stuff, like, yeah, of course he's gonna arrive at like some wildly speculative ideas as well. Please show chat what he means by Frank. Is he referring to an extinct Jewish heresy? Wait, why doesn't he believe in the Khazar theory? Frankism was a Sabbatean religious movement originating in Eastern Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. Created in Podolia, it was named after its founder, Jacob Frank. Frank completely rejected Jewish norms, preaching to his followers that they were obligated to transgress moral boundaries, embracing antinomianism. The Frankists were engaged in incest orgies and sex rituals, such as the infamous 1756 incident in Langstroon, where they were allegedly caught dancing around half-naked women, symbolizing the Shekinah. At his height, Frankism claimed perhaps 50,000 followers, primarily Jews living in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, as well as Iran is considering allowing a limited number of oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, provided that the oil cargo is traded in Chinese yuan. A senior Iranian official tells CNN. Wait, what the fuck? Okay, let's do the OnlyFans clip. Let's finish that.
I'm not sure if you've heard this, but just the idea that you have a percentage of American white girls in the 20s all on OnlyFans, that's just incredible to think about, okay? And you know, like the people joke that that's what America wants to do. America wants to liberate Iranian women so that they can go on OnlyFans and enjoy American corruption and decadence, all right?
So this statistic says on Google that for women aged 18 to 24, roughly 14% are active on OnlyFans. So that's 18 to 24. Right. Imagine it's probably 20% or maybe 30% if you go up to 35, 40 years old. And the percentage of these women that are white, it's about 70%. So, and that's the narrative you're hearing from the Trump people. They're saying, oh, look, the libtards are getting owned. And they're posting images of Iranian girls stripping free of their of their niqab, their oppressive niqab, and now they're naked, which is so ridiculous because it's the conservative right saying the libtards are mad that women are on OnlyFans.
Yeah. So again, OnlyFans, I think, is the best indicator of a society in decline, right? So the Roman Empire, when it declined, the main problem was that women refused to have children. And so everyone was freaking out, like, what can we do about it?
This is lower than the percentage of women in this age doing OnlyFans, according to a new study. What's the study, Ryan? What do you mean? The OnlyFans index.
They keep on the...
Professor Jiang says Islam was created by the Jews. I mean, Roman helmet guy is Professor Jiang, by the way, but of a different variety. So it's really ironic that he's mad at Professor Jiang when this is literally what Roman helmet guy is as well. Okay? He just does this for the Roman Empire. He's a crank as well, but for the fucking Roman Empire. The cranks are fighting amongst themselves.
And so they keep on the fight, even though they've lost the war against...
Why is the professor in quotation marks? Because he's not actually a professor. I think he's like an English teacher in high school in like Beijing. Yeah, he's not.
Romans, they will go into the Arabian desert where they will incubate a new religion called Islam, and they will prophesy the coming of the Messiah, who will turn out to be Muhammad, right? So at this point in history, the Jews must leave Jerusalem because the Romans basically kicked them out, and their religion will splinter into many different factions. And as we discussed, what will happen is those Jews who are most fanatical, they will escape into the Arabian desert and they will incubate Islam. And eventually, Islam will conquer the world. And at this point, they feel as though they've achieved...
Dude, okay. Everyone needs a Nation of Islam style theory. So Professor Jiang fills that void for people that are looking at the senseless bloodshed and trying to make sense of it, okay? Because, like, this is low-key, Dr. Yakub. Like, this is Dr. Yakub for swagged out white boys who are trying to make sense of why America and Israel are just, like, fucking dominating this region and pummeling it into oblivion, but refuse to base their analysis in any sort of, like, previous communist thought. I just want you all to know that no one knows who this guy is in China, and we're all laughing at you for listening to him. Okay, calm down. This guy is China's greatest mind.
The Messianic age, and they have returned to Jerusalem.
I don't think he has any good takes, Law. No, he does. He does. He absolutely does. We're just looking at all the bad takes in a row. That's why it's like hard to defend. The reason, if you are wondering why so many people, even in this fucking community, are like actively trying to ride for Dr. Zhang, is because he does have a lot of viral videos that are like pretty on the money with respect to like American ambitions in the region and how it's like failing. So, well, Zhang is more popular than you on Bilibili, so I agree with that disagree with that former chatter.
Now, the Jews believe that in the Messianic age, the Messiah will come, lead them to victory, bring all the Jews back to Jerusalem, and build the third temple and usher in the Messianic age. Okay, and that's what they believe happened. And so this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. And this is meant to be the third temple. Over time, what will happen is they will change it to become a center of Islamic worship. But in the beginning, it was really the third temple.
I cannot believe that I literally sidestepped away from two actual brilliant thinkers that have spent a lifetime, Chris Hedges being a investigative reporter, that fucking stories, and Professor Mearsheimer, who is probably one of the most important realpolitik academics in the country, to literally watch Professor Jiang clip compilations. We are a deeply unserious community. What the fuck is wrong with me? And what the fuck is wrong with you? Oh my God. We literally took this sidestep because someone literally said, Professor Jiang and Professor Mearsheimer agree on everything. I'm so stupid. I'm going back to serious shit, please.
Is erroneous thinking.
Well, we tried that in Vietnam.
We tried it in Korea. If you ever look at what we did to North Korea during the Korean War, it's horrific. It's much worse than what we did in Vietnam. And then you go back to World War I, World War II. Excuse me, not World War I, World War II in Europe and World War II in East Asia against Japan. I mean, the number of people that we killed is just hard to believe. But it's very hard, if not impossible, to get.
I remembered I have free will. That's what happened. So I could lock
those
in
air campaigns to cause a government to quit.
Well, is there an example of an air campaign that does break a government? I don't think so. Historically, is there?
No, I think the only case you could make is the dropping 2 nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and August 9th got the Japanese to finally quit. The Japanese were at the edge of the cliff by August of 1945, and the question is what pushed them off the cliff. And some people would argue it was the 2 nuclear weapons on those 2 dates. I actually think that's not true. I think it was when the Russians came in on August 8th.
Yep.
Remember, the war in Europe is won on May 8th, 1945. And at Yalta, the Russians or the Soviets had said that they would come in 3 months after the war in Europe ended. In other words, they would come into the war against Japan.
I can't believe a 31 subscriber said, I'm just catching up to Professor Jung's analysis. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Professor Mearsheimer, I can't take you seriously. You do not have a whiteboard where you're overemphasizing certain words and talking about the impact of Frankists.
3 months after the war in Europe ended. And the war in Europe ends on May 8th, 1945. And 3 months later, on August 8th, 1945, the Soviets invade against the Japanese Kwantung Army in Manchuria and quickly overrun it. I believe that it's the Soviet decision to attack Japan on August 8th, which is in between the 2 bombs on August 6th and August 9th, that is the critical factor that gets the Japanese to throw up their hands. But that's the only case you can make where one could say that air power helped a bit to end the war. But just quickly, Chris, on that case, because it's important to understand it, we start firebombing Japan on the evening of March 10th, 11th, 1945. And the first night that we firebombed Tokyo, this is March 10th, we kill more Japanese than are killed at either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Just think about that. That's the first night we firebombed Tokyo. And then we're working our way down the list of large Japanese cities and firebombing them, murdering huge numbers of people. Just truly remarkable. And the Japanese don't quit. They don't quit until
Professor Mearsheimer, what is your estimate on the percentage of white women in their 20s that are doing OnlyFans?
August. And that, of course, is when the 2 nuclear weapons, the Soviets come into the war. And that's sort of the coup de grace. But firebombing just didn't work. And it supports the basic point that I'm making, that you can murder, and this is really murder because you're purposely targeting civilians. You can murder huge numbers of civilians, and it doesn't work. The historical record is remarkably clear on this. And here we are in Iran. We're not going to send ground forces in, right? We're going to rely on air power. We're going to bomb, and we're going to bomb Iran and win the war. We're going to create regime change without sending ground forces in. Just going to do it through the air. The historical record makes it unequivocally clear that this is almost impossible to do.
Yep.
Absent a miracle.
It's never happened. It has never happened. The closest association that you can make in recent history is Libya. And in Libya, you had popular mobilization of ground forces. So it wasn't the American military, but you had a popular mobilization. It has never happened. And it will never happen. That's not how things work.
Miracles. it's hard to get regime change, or impossible to get regime change using air power alone. You got to send boots. You got to put boots on the ground. This is what we did in Iraq. We had to invade Iraq to get regime change. And if you want regime change in Iran, you're going to have to invade that country. And that's not going to happen. Country's much too big. There are too many people. And furthermore, we've been there before. It doesn't work very well. And even Donald Trump is smart enough to know that sending an army into Iran would be a real prescription for disaster.
Let's talk about the economic impact of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, and just on the issue of desalination plants, having worked in Saudi Arabia. You take these out, you have a huge humanitarian crisis. I mean, cities like Riyadh are almost completely dependent on desalination.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
See, okay, going back to Professor Zhang, this is the type of shit that he says as well that is correct. He has talked about how the escalation ladder features America and Israel potentially hitting the Iranian desalination plants before it actually happened, and what Iran could do in retaliation, because anyone with like cursory understanding of the fucking region knows that, yeah, they don't have a lot of fresh water supply, and they rely heavily in Gulf nations, especially, even more so than Iran, in desalination plants. Obviously, Iran relies heavily on its desalination plants as well. But like, you know, it's stuff like that make him come across as brilliant, right? That's it. That's what it is. That's why people who didn't know this stuff, if they encounter it for the first time ever from him, they go, "Oh my God, this guy's fucking brilliant. I never thought about that before. I never thought that this like desert land required desalination plants to keep up a fresh water supply for its fucking population." Okay? And that's the reason why they developed this like loyalty to him. I guess I kind of eat off of that a little bit too, because like a lot of the things that I explained to you guys is also things that you're encountering for the first time ever. So then you're like, wow, this guy's fucking brilliant. Why can other people not see what I'm seeing? And if you see the right clips, you also come in and you tune in and you see this shit and you go, wow, this guy's actually really smart about me as well. Okay? Other people don't see that. They only see, because I have a fucking mountain of haters, unlike anybody else after, 10 years of fucking doing this. Other people only see bad clips or things that are clipped out of context. And they go, oh, fuck this guy. This guy's a fucking idiot. This guy's stupid.
And the administration, the Trump administration, has told the Israelis to stay away from desalination plants. And we do not want to get into a war where both sides are attempting.
Wrong. Iran barely relies on desalination, around 3% of total supply. It doesn't matter. It's still, they do rely on desalination plants as well. Nowhere near to the same fucking degree as the Gulf states, but they still do. When you say barely and you say 3%, which I don't think it's 3%, but do you know what happens when 3% of the fresh water supply is taken out? And it's regional too. There are areas where there isn't access readily available to fresh water supplies. Do you know how fucking insane 3% is? 3% in a 90 million country, especially if you're looking at the region that relies on it, is millions of people that rely on it for their fresh water. It's crazy. Especially if there's no adequate way to reroute fresh water supply in the midst of a heavy, intense bombing campaign. I love you, but your war analysis is horrible. Oh.
To destroy the desalination side, this would not be good, because, as you say, it would be, catastrophic disaster for the people in all of those countries in the Gulf region, and I believe it would have devastating effects inside Israel as well if the Iranians were able to take out those 4 or 5 desalination plants that the Israelis have. So I think that for the time being anyway, we'll stay away from that. The economic consequences, have not been fully felt yet, and we'll see what happens with the passage of time. Very interestingly, the Iranians are still shipping oil out of the Gulf. Needless to say, Iranian tankers or tankers carrying Iranian oil are not going to be sunk by the Iranians, and they can make their way through the Straits of Hormuz. So the Iranians are still selling oil.
Which I think 80% of their seaborne oil goes to China. Is that correct?
I think that's right, yeah. But I think that if you look at China's present situation in terms of, how much reserve, where it gets its additional oil from, China is not going to be hurt that much, at least initially, if the oil is cut off. It's Japan and South Korea that are going to be clobbered. Japan and South Korea are more dependent on oil coming out of the Gulf than the Chinese are. It's quite interesting here, Chris, but if you think about it, the Europeans are really going to be hurt badly if the oil is cut off for a sustained period of time. And you want to remember, the Europeans are already in trouble because they're not getting oil and gas in the way they used to from Russia. And now they're depending more on the United States and the Middle East. So if you cut off the flow of oil and gas from the Middle East to Europe, on top of the fact that all that oil and gas coming out of Russia has been curtailed, you can see with the European economies, which are already struggling, are going to be even in more trouble. So Europe is going to be hurt. It looks like Japan and South Korea are going to be hurt. And then there are countries, that are less developed, like Nigeria, that are going to pay a real price as a result of what's happening here. So the economic...
Dog, they're sending 2,500 Marines to Hormuz. How is it not a war now? First of all, it's been a war. We are now 13 days into the war. Secondly, what the fuck are 2,500 Marines going to do? They're just going to get fucking killed. And it's even higher than that. Yeah, we're sending 5,000 of our hardest dicked Marines into the region. They're going to seize control over Karg Island, okay? They're going to get deployed, and they're going to take it over, and these are some of the hardest cocked Marines we have, okay? Their dicks are so hard. They say slurs. They say the best slurs. They know slurs that you've never even thought about, okay? And they're going to come in, and it's like a COD mission. It's a Battlefield 3 map. They've already played Battlefield 3. They're ready for it. They're eating all the best crayons. They're eating all the best Blue Chew. Their cocks are so hard. Hoorah. They're going to be deployed, and they're going to take it out. This is insane. As I've described earlier, you need a far, far larger troop deployment than 5,000 to overtake even the not just Karg Island, but also the Iranian coastline surrounding Karg Island. And before you do that, you also need to completely eviscerate the Iranian missile launching and drone launching capabilities before you can even make this deployment. It seems like that would be the entry point up the escalation ladder. But ultimately, for that to continue, if you deploy 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 soldiers into the Iranian coastline to achieve any sort of like military success in overtaking the Iranian coastline, let's say you actually completely destroyed, maintain air superiority, completely destroyed their anti-air defense systems, and have complete air superiority over the Iranian coastline, and you're deploying these troops into the Iranian coastline and also Karg so you can take over the surrounding region, okay? You still don't have you don't have a supply route that is clear that can directly feed into the front line, okay? Before you even establish a forward operating base, you need to do that. But let's say you did all that. Where do we go from there, right? You can only maintain that position. It's not sustainable. You can maintain that position, let's say, for a limited amount of time. Like everything went super well. These are basically, these are the Terminator style Marines, and they just can fucking eat a Shahed drone in the face and survive somehow. Okay? How long can you hold that position? Iranian ground troops are deployed against you. Now you're fighting against them. How long can you hold it? What is Karg Island and why is it important? 90% of all oil that travels by sea goes through Karg Island. It's a tiny little island right on the coast of the Iranian shoreline, and all of the oil goes through Karg Island. It's unbelievable that they think this would look like anything different than sending some kind of destroyer to tow an oil tanker. It's even worse because now you have, combat casualties. All of the Iranian oil passes through Karg Island. But from that point onward, you have to increase the deployment, right? You have to increase from that point on, it's a full-blown boots on the ground military deployment, right? And then you run into the same exact problems that I've been explaining for the past month and explained to you earlier today. The Iranian topography, making it virtually impossible to fucking invade by land, the lack of supply routes to the front line, all of that comes into play. The 93 million people that live there, the areas, the population centers that are deeply nestled inside of these mountains. It's just impossible. It's completely impossible. It's a fucking death trap. They have to pull out before they do this.
Economic consequences, which are just beginning to be felt, could be significantly worse. And the consequences of this for the world.
It's not impossible, but you need real backing and smarts. No, chatter. It's impossible. There's nothing you can do. It's functionally impossible to secure a military victory by invading Iran this way. All you're doing is throwing troops into the fucking troop grinder.
The world economy could be catastrophic. And of course, the Trump administration fully understands that. They understand that, to some extent, it's hard to predict exactly how this plays out. But they surely understand that you can tell plausible stories as to how this ends up being one giant nightmare. Again, it's not to say that will happen, but you can tell plausible stories about how this becomes a nightmare. We go far enough up the escalation ladder, and the Iranians really go after the Gulf states and really go to great lengths to destroy their oil infrastructure and gas infrastructure. The consequences could be disastrous for everyone on the planet. And the Trump administration understands that. They don't want to take any chances here. This is why you see evidence that the Trump administration is looking for an off-ramp.
Well, the Iranians aren't going to give it to them, are they?
They'd be crazy to give it to them unless they get a good deal. You hardly see any talk about this in the mainstream media, but all of the talk revolving around the question of an off-ramp and ending this war has to do with how we think we fared in the end and how we think the Israelis fared in the end. In other words, the Israelis are fearful that if we cut a deal now without regime change or without destroying Iran, this will be a victory for Iran, and the Americans might be happy, but we're not happy. And President Trump and his people are thinking that given that we have the midterm elections coming up, the war is not going well, we have to end it. And even if we don't have a decisive victory, so be it. It's just important that we get this war put to bed and declare victory and then start worrying about the election in November. That's the way the discourse is evolving in the West. But
nah, my uncle works at the Navy. He told me that the Navy only selected real gamers for this mission. Fake gamers like you could never conceive the tactical superiority inherent to our tactical capabilities as true gamers. Hasan, you don't understand. We're sending 2,000 A-rank jujutsu sorcerers. Oh, it's fucking over, dude. Iran gonna find out why we don't have healthcare. Turns out we didn't know why we didn't have healthcare. It was because we had 2,000 A-rank jujutsu sorcerers that we were holding captive at Fort Bragg, and now they're deployed.
Nobody seems to understand that to get the Iranians to quit, you have to offer them a deal that they find acceptable, because they're in the driver's seat now. the war is playing to their advantage. They figured out that they have leverage over the United States. Can you do a Connor
soon? I can make a
and over
PowerPoint.
Israel. The fact that they have all these ballistic missiles and all these drones, and they're operating in a target-rich environment. They understand that they don't want to quit here.
Yeah,
right?
we're sending our greatest sexual assaulters, domain expansion, rape from Fort Bragg directly to Iran. Just look out, dude.
They want to use this capability to give them leverage. Now you say to yourself, leverage for what? Leverage to get a deal at the end of this conflict, to get some sort of arrangement put in place.
How old is the interview? It's 1 day old.
It leaves them much better off than they were before February 28th. So what exactly does that mean? First of all, they're going to want sanctions relief. They're going to want major sanctions relief. They're probably going to want reparations. And they're probably going to want some sort of arrangement that guarantees that the Israelis and the Americans can't pay them a return visit in 6 months or a year. Remember, last June, there was a war against Iran. And here we are in March with another war against Iran. This is, in less than 1 year, Iran has been attacked 2 times by the tag team. They don't want a third war. And the question is, how can they prevent a third war? How can they get these sanctions finally taken off of Iran? These are issues that they care greatly about.
Yep.
And when they negotiate an armistice or a peace agreement or some sort of deal to put an end to this war,
there isn't going to be a deal at any point. They're going to make us suffer deeply. This is existential. No, you're wrong. They will absolutely, once the Western world and the global energy markets have incurred a significant enough penalty that causes America to literally play ball with Iran as a sovereign state, they will absolutely take a deal. But the deterrence needs to be set. That's the calculation. Because if there isn't a significant enough penalty here for Israel and for America, and the greatest victory condition for Iran would most likely be, one, the state surviving this, okay, intact, diminished, but still intact. And two, America is forced to basically cut Israel out of the negotiations process or reassert its control over Israel in this negotiation process. That would be the victory condition for Iran. They absolutely will take a deal. It's just that they have to make sure that Americans understand that this is they're going to get out of this not just with like a bloody nose, but a really important lesson not to ever do this again. What happens when they go to the table for a deal and Israel, America tries decapitation operations again? Okay, back to square one. Because square one is where Iran is comfortable. Square one means Strait of Hormuz is closed again. Iran doesn't have nukes, so it needs to establish deterrence through the nuke of the energy markets. Iran will have nukes, I think. Our 2,200 Marines are going. Ground invasion is ready. I suspect that, one, you will see a nuclear Iran in this decade. If they survive this, if Israel and America don't somehow, I don't know, successfully destroy the Iranian state somehow, because, you know, there's still, even if it's unlikely, there's still an option, right? They could get, I don't know, they could actually do something crazy. They could get like, they could foment some kind of, popular mobilization. They could create like ethnic conflict. Because you have to remember, like, Israel, its capacities are greatly over-exaggerated, and they certainly greatly over-exaggerated to the Americans as well, and that's part of the reason why we're in this situation to begin with. But Israel does have some access inside of the Iranian state. If that wasn't the case, they wouldn't be shutting off the internet right now, right? Like, they would not be limiting access to the internet. Like, there are still people that they could deploy. I'm sure there's still people that they could activate and certainly cause chaos internally. And right now, Iran is at a fragile state. Iran is absolutely in a fragile from like As far as their calculation goes, like they have to maintain control over the government. I've said this over and over again. I keep stressing this. This is very important because the one thing that will be the end of Iran is if there is a real popular mobilization, not just like Kurds here and there, but I'm talking like straight up everywhere in major city centers. People are just like taking to the streets. They're saying enough is enough, you know? We've been punished by you first, and now Israel and America because of you. All this stuff, like if Israel could activate enough people, this would be genuinely worrisome because then Iran comes in, deploys the Basij forces, starts brutalizing the protesters, and then that only increases the anger and resentment from the people, and you don't want that. That's the victory condition for Israel.
We're going to have demands, and we're going to have to meet those demands. And if we don't meet those demands, they have an incentive to continue upping the ante until we do agree to certain of those demands. And this is why I say it's hard to see where the United States has a clear off-ramp today, because it's not just getting the Israelis on board with quitting this war. You have to work out a deal with the Iranians. And given the balance of what looks like the balance of power now between Iran on one side and the United States and the Israelis on the other side, in terms of the conduct of the war, they have no incentive to quit. They should continue to fight.
Let's talk about the consequences. Let's say this does become protracted, weeks, months. You use the word catastrophic. Paint a picture of what the global economy could look like.
Well, you could have a worldwide depression. You could have something less than that, like a worldwide recession that would have huge consequences for people all over the planet, especially in developing countries. Less so in developed countries, but even in developed countries, it's quite clear that the importance of oil for running the international economy simply can't be underestimated. You know, it's very interesting, but for people who study grand strategy like I do, and you talk about what areas of the world matter to the United States, where are our vital interests at stake, almost everybody says that outside of the Western Hemisphere, East Asia and Europe matter enormously, and they have both mattered enormously over time because that's where the other great powers are. But then the question is, why does the Persian Gulf, not the Middle East, but the Persian Gulf, why is the Persian Gulf considered to be the third most important or the third important strategic area? You can understand East Asia and you can understand Europe because that's where the great powers are. But why the Persian Gulf? And the answer, of course, is not because there's any great power in the Persian Gulf. There is not. It's because that's where the oil is. And we have long understood the centrality of oil, this natural resource, for fueling the international economy. And if something went catastrophically wrong with the flow of oil coming out of the Middle East, this would have disastrous consequences for the international economy. We've long understood this, and this is why we consider the Persian Gulf to be a vital strategic interest.
This is also literally the reason why for the past 47 years, we have tried to fuck up Iran for this exact moment, because we wanted to get ahead of this exact thing that's happening right now, never happening. That was the big threat. That was the big fear. Okay? That's why we did the sanctions. That's why we kept saying Iran is our greatest enemy. Iran is a major threat. Kamala Harris, if you recall, said Iran is our number one threat. That's what Kamala Harris said, and people still try to tell me that fucking she wasn't a massive Zionist, a massive dick rider of Israel. Iran has never been a threat to the United States of America, not even a little bit, okay? It is one of the most ridiculous lies that America has told itself. You can talk about Iranian domestic repression all day, every day, okay? That is not a threat to America, okay? It's not. That's just seasoning that you're adding onto the pile to justify incursions, justify instability, justify destroying the state of Iran. That's it. Financial Times reports the U.S. and Israeli war on Iran has destroyed billions of dollars of Persian Gulf energy revenue. Citing estimates by the analytical firm Kepler, it reported that oil producers in the Persian Gulf region have lost about 15.1 billion in energy revenue since the start of the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran.
All of that tells you that if this war plays out in ways that you have a serious cutoff of the flow of oil out of the Gulf, or it's almost completely cut off, this will have disastrous consequences for the international
Hasan's still crashing out. What a surprise. Let's keep this one as a pet.
Economy. And
I want to know.
I
want to know what other incredible takes he has. Go on, Marines, destroy that shithole Iran.
Case of not being able to get gas for your car at a reasonable price. That'll be the least of our problems. The fact is that if you cut off the flow of oil from the Gulf, the effects of that will ripple throughout the economy. It will have a tremendous effect on the industrial base as a whole. It will have a tremendous effect on the cost of electricity. Inflation will go through the roof. Production will be curtailed in serious ways.
So explain why they chant death to America. Okay. The average American is actual livestock, straight up, that this is like effective propaganda for the average American. Iranians say, Marg bar America, Marg bar Israel. Okay, death to America, death to Israel, is because of all of the things that we've done to them. Okay? They are not a threat to us, but we are a threat to them. Okay? Whether it be the Iran-Iraq war, whether it be all of the crippling sanctions that have caused incalculable amounts of harm, not only to the Iranian economy, but just to like regular Iranian existence, whether it be Israel consistently engaging in assassinations on Iranian soil and refusing to allow Iran to have any sort of sovereignty whatsoever for the past fucking 47 years. At times, Israel has actually aided Iran as well. And ironically, so has Ronald Reagan. But you say they aren't a threat because they're not a threat. We actually have actively destabilized Iran. They have done nothing back to us in return for that destabilization. So yes, they can say death to America every day. That doesn't mean anything if they're not actually doing death to America. America, on the other hand, not only says death to Iran, but also follows through on that promise. We nuked Japan twice. Look at them. So they can't be an excuse. When I see stuff like this, I do understand why America and Americans must be brought to heel. I do get it because we have eaten off of American exceptionalism for far too long. And it's actually pretty crazy to me that like, even though they're putting ass to belt right now with the global energy markets and with, you know, American military installations in the region, there are still dumb fuck Americans who are like, well, we nuked Japan twice. Look at them. So that can't be an excuse. It's quite difficult for you to comprehend why people would understandably hate America or American instability that is, you know, destroyed or actively tried to destroy ass to belt. Yeah, sorry. Belt to ass. Hell yeah, brother. Brother, you don't understand. Your economy and my economy, our economy is in fucking tatters. America is not on top. Tens of billions of dollars in assets are destroyed by $10,000 drones. Okay? The Strait of Hormuz is closed. America's ass is so fucked right now by Iran that they can't even fucking seize Iranian oil tankers that are shipping oil to China. Ask yourself that question. Why is America not seizing Iranian oil tankers right now that are going to China? Why has Iran been able to close the Strait of Hormuz while simultaneously ship more oil to China? Well, your propaganda doesn't work on me. Brother, this is not propaganda. This is an accurate reflection of events that are unfolding. Just please ask yourself why this, ask yourself where the W is here for America. Not even for like regular Americans, ordinary Americans, because ordinary Americans don't even win when America is seemingly winning. Okay? Accurate in air quotes. I mean, if you choose to live in an alternative reality, events will always be confusing to you. You've taken the first step. Okay? You've reached across the aisle. You're hearing from someone that you normally don't hear from. So I urge you to try and comprehend. If America and the American Navy is so superior, why is the Strait of Hormuz not open? if the United States of America's Navy is so powerful and we put belt to ass everywhere around the world, why is the American Navy currently not seizing Iranian oil tankers? We did this to the Russian oil tankers. We did this to Venezuela. Why can we not do it to Iran right now? Why is Iran crossing the Strait of Hormuz that it currently controls, okay, with Iranian oil tankers? It will be soon. Make sure you remember this. No, answer my question. Maybe it will be soon. Maybe something is something. Maybe there's going to be a dramatic shift in events, okay? But it hasn't happened thus far. So why hasn't it happened thus far? Because we need our Navy to keep pounding Iran, just like the Navy is not taking over any oil tankers right now. Why? Why are they not doing that? Why do we have to hastily pull our THAADs from South Korea into the Gulf? Why are we completely incapable of defending our own assets in the region? You got numerous American bases that have turned into a fucking crater at this point. The Bahrain one is just a crater. Why are American Strato tankers falling out of the fucking sky in Iraq? Why are there 150 casualties so far that we know of? The number's probably larger than that. Why is gas so expensive if we're fucking dominating? We're bringing on a ship to clear them, lol. You know they have mines, right? Oh, they don't. I mean, they do, but they haven't deployed them. That was also a lie. How are Iranian oil tankers navigating the Strait of Hormuz if it's currently mined? Why is there no military analysis that says that the Strait of Hormuz is mined right now? Why do you think that Iran needs to mine the Strait of Hormuz to hold this 20-mile choke point when they can very clearly do it without mining it? Mining the Strait of Hormuz is a last-ditch effort. It's the last option. It's the nuclear option. The reason why they're not mining the Strait of Hormuz is because they can control the Strait of Hormuz without actually mining it at the time. Plus, they have to pass their own oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, as they are consistently doing. They struck Karg? Oh, shit. Footage shows Iranian missile purportedly striking Nevatim air base in southern Israel moments ago, and now chatters are saying we struck Karg. Oh, no. That is, if this means the Iranian retaliation will be to strike the Gulf states. This also makes sense. Someone in the Gulf reached out to me literally 10 minutes ago and said that Qatar is actually evacuating certain areas right now. That means that they are going to, if we struck Karg, that means that they are going to strike back at regional oil refineries. 1 minute ago, Trump, at my direction, United States Central Command struck Karg Island. Ooh. Okay, maybe they will mine the Strait of Hormuz now. Moments ago, at my direction, the United States Central Command executed one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East and totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. Our weapons are the most powerful and sophisticated the world has ever known, but for reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. During my first term and currently, I rebuilt our military into the most lethal, powerful, and effective force by far anywhere in the world.